2015 is a watershed year in many ways, for us not least of which the launch of SkyWatchTV. Welcome, I'm Derek Gilbert. This is a special report as we take a look back at 2015, some of the biggest news stories and some of the things that have taken place here in the compound. And joining me in studio, the CEO of SkyWatchTV, Tom Horn, and my best friend, wife, the SkyWatchTV science editor, Sharon K. Gilbert.
Hi, honey.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good move to put the pretty one in between the two guys.
That's right. Rose among the thorns. Yes.
Oh, well.
Well, let's take a look at some of the big news items this year. We're all news junkies. We keep an eye on what's happening around the world. And there are some big things taking place this year. Some that are really amount to a fundamental change in what it means to be human.
Right. Well, I think, you guys have started doing Sci Friday, and partly because not only are you interested, but because science is developing so quickly that to be a legitimate news agency, it almost every week, right? You're compelled to come in and talk about what's happening in science. Of course, transhumanism has been something I've been interested in as a non-scientist, as a layperson. And part of that is the way in which it might also affect theology and eschatology.
Yeah.
And is what we are seeing some part of the end times? But even if not, you would have to be concerned, wouldn't you, as a believer in Scripture and in Christianity and in creation, that we're now doing things that evolution or biblical creation allowed for, and what might the consequences of that be?
You know, a question I get a lot is, if God is sovereign, why would he allow this? What's your answer to that?
Well, if God is sovereign, why would he allow that? First of all, we're not even in a time frame right now that was as God originally created it.
Right.
He gave power to men, and he created us in his image to have responsibility, a certain level of sovereignty, to have dominion over the earth. And those are things that we gave up. And following the fall of man, I mean, you reap what you sow, right? We see this in little ways all the time in our own homes. A man starts thinking about another woman, right? He knows he shouldn't, and he knows in his mind he's crossing over certain places, and he allows it to take him. And then finally, he does the unthinkable. He has an affair. The kids are ruined by it. The marriage is ruined by it. But these are still decisions that we make as a result of our, what theologians call our free moral agency.
Well, and those free will choices are being made by Christians, non-Christians. We all get it. If you're human, you get free will. And scientists are using their free will, but their free will choices are going to affect our ability to make certain choices if God allows it to continue.
Well, you know what, Sharon, think back about this. We started the Inhuman documentary, which we just released, which really delves into all of these issues. You are part of that. Derek, I'm part of it. You wrote a lot of the script. And we interviewed people around the world. But when we started that project, I still remember like one really well-known prophecy teacher, who I won't mention, saying to me, God will never let this happen. The technology will never exist. Well, it does exist.
It does exist.
But also back then, Christians were thinking, this is absolutely an attack, an assault on the sovereignty of God. Let's imagine for a moment it's not even prophetic. It's still an assault on his creative genius.
Right.
And you got to wonder what Pandora's box could be opened as a result of us disrespecting a God who put barriers between the species and all those. So there's that kind of theological connotation. And even 5 years ago, the average Christian would never be willing to embrace this kind of technology, or to think that somehow we can add it to our theology. We're going to become co-creators with God, all of which now is actually being talked about.
Exactly. There was a story that just came out this week about some new sci-fi religions that are growing out of the transhumanist movement. Terrasim, the Church of Perpetual Life, and the pastors leading those religions, looking for silicon heaven, are reporting that many in their congregations claim to be practicing Christians. Well, these are obviously Christians who don't really understand the reasons for the hope we have in Christ Jesus, because they're willing to trade the promise of immortal life, which we already have from Jesus Christ, for a technological promise that someday maybe we'll figure out how we can upload our conscience to a cosmic mainframe.
That become immortal in that way.
They're misplacing their faith, and what it is leading people astray and leading them out of salvation into a false salvation offered by technology.
Well, biblical inerrancy has added to this a lot. When we were young people, there was no such thing as the internet. There was no easy way to find proof. You had to know the Bible, right?
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't just go search a word and find
Have
a bunch
a paper
of...
copy, mark it up, yeah.
For all the good that the information highway has brought to us, and I do appreciate it and use it all the time, we're using
look,
it.
what is right here?
We're using it right now. There is this opposite side of that biblical illiteracy. Too many people really don't understand the scripture very well.
That's right.
They just hear these things, they sound cool. And transhumanism has this very sexy kind of side to it. It's trendy, it's today's thing. All the kids are running around with iPhones and we're integrating with technology. It's all around us, and so it feels natural. It feels like, yeah, this is where we're going, this is what we're going to do. We're going to use it for good things. Now, and so you have this catch-22. We had Chuck Misler on the program here recently. Gordon MacDonald, who's always with him, working with him, and I have had these long conversations about what he calls convergence. But he means that in a really positive way, meaning that we're going to have fabulous ministry opportunities to fulfill the Great Commission, to take the gospel to the ends of the world as a result of technology, right?
That's right.
So there is this real strong upside. But as we know, the Antichrist is going to use technology too, right? To bring the world into slavery. There's an article just this week, I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, Sharon, but it's talking about, is the Church of England going to endorse human genetic modification as a good thing, as a positive thing? And they're actually, from what they've said so far, it appears that they are leaning towards saying, yeah, this modifying humans at the germline level is a good thing. We can create humans that are impervious to cancer and so on, but it's going to mean altering them in ways that they are no longer that product that God created.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, by doing that, you've just affected the free will of your children and grandchildren.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, this year saw a historic summit in Washington, D.C., where researchers came together to discuss the ethics of human gene editing.
Germline engineering.
Yeah. What was the significance of that?
Well, they were trying to figure out whether or not there should be legislation that either gave us rules to follow or a moratorium where nobody's going to do it for a while until we figure out really what the science is all about and how this is going to affect people, and also how it's going to affect the law and ethics. There were a lot of really good questions asked. In fact, one of the speakers, he brought it up again. He said, look, this is neo-eugenics. Let's review what happened with the eugenics movement. And we look back on that, and I know that scientists today look back at the eugenicists and they go, well, they had a really good plan and they had some good ideas, but their science was really very nascent. It was very kindergarten compared to what we know now. Now we can really do it. Well, 100 years from now, if we're still here and Jesus hasn't come yet, they will look back and they'll go, boy, that early 21st century bunch, they were just kindergartners. Now we know what we're doing.
Yeah. Except that now we really do have the technology.
That's the sad thing.
To alter living species, including humans,
Yes.
at the germline level. You spoke before, I think, on one of the Sci Fridays, which has become one of people's very popular.
That actually was never planned originally. It just kind of organically grew.
Fun though. I mean, it comes on. You got that big loud voice, Sci Friday, right? And you guys have a great chemistry. People love that chemistry. I was just saying to one of you off the air how that if you go to YouTube, and I still don't even know how to hook my Roku up. I got one finally, but I don't know how to hook it up. So I got to have somebody smart come over and hook it up for me. But some of the programs that you guys have done, those Sci Friday programs, some of the others, the one you did with Colonel Robert McGinnis recently,
yes.
those programs have played as much as our regular television broadcast programs have played. So that's becoming really popular. And I think tomorrow we're going to talk about what's coming in 2016.
Yeah.
So right now we're looking back. So I won't jump forward in the conversation.
Well, we're jumping into the transhumanism movement, which really was very important to us this year because we had the DVD documentary that you produced that you put years into, and it's just an amazing. If you haven't gotten it, you got to get.
And we're getting really good reports back too. A lot of emails where people are saying, "Wow, we're really impressed.
Yeah,
this
and
is
we've
really
shown
well
it to
done."
our friends, and we've shown it to our church. Yeah, it is being very well received. But when you started all this, what was your initial vision? Because we haven't even been here a year yet.
Right. Yeah, and again, we'll talk about that more tomorrow, about how much has been accomplished in 1 year and now what we're expecting to do in 2016. But it really just was a God thing. I mean, I never set out. I'm not a scientist. I don't have any degrees in science. And so, you know, a guy should know what he doesn't know, right, as much as what maybe he does know. And what I do know is very little, so I always try to be really careful.
I wouldn't say
but,
that.
you know, long story short, I saw a word online early in the internet. I saw a word called transgenics, and I'd never saw the term before. Didn't know what it was. I'm just an old fat preacher, right? Pastor for 25 years. What is transgenics? But in my head, I could get trans genes that somehow talking about crossing over species barriers. So I started writing about it, and I came under attack by some of the world's leading transhumanists because I was saying we got to be careful here. They didn't like what I was saying. Certainly didn't like the fact that I was coming at this from a biblical worldview. One thing led to the other, kind of a long story, but finally I decided to just reach across the table. And we wound up getting James Hughes, Natasha Vita-Moore, some of the world's leading transhumanists. We also got the conservatives like Wesley Smith, Professor Holbert from Stanford University. And then right in the middle, we brought in all the Bible thinkers to put the ethics of it into a biblical context. And also, do we think that there's something prophetic about this? Noah Hutchings, who passed away right after we did our interviews with him. He's in this film. It's the last film he obviously will ever be in. But tomorrow I'm going to be doing 3 radio shows with Southwest Radio Church. Larry Spargimino, who is now the official spokesperson for Southwest Radio Church. Bob Glaze is the new president of Southwest Radio Church. So we ask people to keep them in their prayers as they're in this transitionary period. But he wound up in the film. So it was just a God thing. I mean, it just kind of took on a life of its own, right? But the timing, if you would have told me 5 years ago, hey, in 2012, a science is going to be invented called CRISPR-Cas9, but by 2015, you're going to have scientists from around the world convening in Washington, D.C., using terms like Pandora's box.
Yes.
We've opened a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
There's no way to contain this. Or what can we do? And I had thought they would call for a universal moratorium, even though I said it won't matter.
I did too.
Nations that want to do it are going to do it anyway. But kind of like the Paris talks this last week, they come up with all these nations that say they're going to agree to certain things, and none of them are going to do it.
No enforcement mechanism. Yeah.
There's no enforcement mechanism. So, but they didn't. In fact, they actually said because there would be no way to assure that rogue nations or even terrorists are going to use this technology. We're just saying to the world, we hope that you won't use this on modifying humans at the germline level until we understand more about the technology and go through all these big ethical discussions about, is it neo-eugenics? And it is, of course.
It is.
Yeah.
But we're doing it already. China's already admitted they're doing it at the embryonic level. I suspect there are nations that are doing it in advance of that.
Well, and over there's a big factory that just is opening up now, and he said that he plans on cloning not only cows, but eventually cloning primates, and to him, we're primates.
Right,
So,
humans.
And it was good to see secular scientists taking a hard look at this, at the ethics. Now, of course, coming at this from a Christian perspective and looking at this big picture, I think what we're seeing more than just in the transhumanist movement is a broader assault on the order of God's creation. Specifically, in the beginning created he them male and female. In 2015 in the United States, we saw the Supreme Court make homosexual marriage the law of the land, essentially. We also saw in 2015, Glamour Magazine's Woman of the Year is a man.
Right.
That is a direct assault on God's intended plan for humanity. Now, secularists would argue that that doesn't matter, and we're the product of pure blind luck and chance and billions of years, and so we're free to do whatever we want. Self-directed evolution is the whole point. But I think this is where we're going to see common cause and an alliance between the transgender, the LGBT movement, and the transhumanist movement, because they agree on this concept that we are free to redefine ourselves any way we like for no other reason than I want to.
Yeah.
And and don't you think, is it a huge coincidence, morphological freedom? Max Moore, considered the father of the modern transhumanist movement. That was his whole phraseology, morphological freedom. We have the right to alter ourselves any way we want, in terms of our mind, in terms of our body, in terms of our makeup, how many arms do we have, whatever, right? And that is really the underlying concept behind transgenderism too. But do you think it's a coincidence that in the New Testament, in the primary prophecies out of Luke, Matthew 24, when it talks about the end times, it gives us things that it says will be happening, as it was in the days of Noah, where there was a genetics corruption that happened. But it also says the days of Lot.
Right, the corresponding,
yes.
And so all of a sudden, right, we're seeing, and it isn't just that there haven't always been gender neutral people, but what made the days of Lot different was that you had a system of government that endorsed it and allowed for it. And that's what's happened now in 2015. Looking back on 2015, we do have several major pieces of news, and they all seem to be prophetic. You have the Supreme Court of the most powerful nation on earth saying this will now be the law of the land.
Right.
That's the days of Lot all over again. You have now the transhumanist breakthroughs in CRISPR-Cas9 technology. Now we also have breakthroughs this year in AI, artificial intelligence, and you guys have been doing some Sci Fridays on that too.
Right.
And some of those now where they're saying that some of these AI systems are learning, they're learning to learn like a child.
Yes.
And those are some of the key, methods.
Some of them are learning by watching YouTube videos.
Yes.
Right.
And the computer chips now, Google is just announcing some
Quantum.
breakthroughs with quantum computing chips, which will
yes.
increase the speed of computing chips by factors of
100,000 times
100,000
faster than a
times.
Cray.
Well, there was a DARPA article yesterday talking about how the breakthrough, Google's quantum computer breakthroughs, is perhaps going to give rise to a new arms race.
Yeah.
So, of course, the military, right? They're all, whether it's transhumanism, AI, whatever it is, cyber attacks. I watched, this week was the last GOP debate, and all of it was about cyber attacks, and we should turn around and attack China. And it was talking about ISIS. ISIS, of course, big news this year. ISIS, we've talked a little bit about them before, but their whole apocalyptic frame of mind. They just produced a video over the last week in which it shows their tanks approaching the Colosseum in Rome. They're talking about killing the Pope. Chris Putnam and I are working on a project. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. But it's trying to put some of that into context. We're thinking this could be bigger than Petrus Romanus when we predicted that the Pope would step down. But we think what we're working on now that we're trying to keep top secret is even bigger. And I am going to go out on a limb in that book and speculate again about some things that I'm pretty certain are going to happen. I'm not a prophet, but we did accurately predict the resignation of the Pope. And I think we've got some bigger predictions that we're going to be making in 2016. Of course, we're going to start 2016 talking, well, let's do that.
I was going to say, we can't. We said we would do that.
I just
in
can't
another
help
show.
myself.
So we have to talk about 2015, but it's been full of stories, and geopolitically, the world seems to be poised for, it really is in the Middle East. It really is a powder keg. We've got literally a war being set up between the Western powers, Russia and China, with the Middle East being the battleground. Israel is the goal. Israel is the prize. And with the discovery in the Golan Heights,
a major oil discovery, which they think could be many times. The typical strata of rock, oil-bearing rock, is about 30 feet thick, and this one they say is about 300 feet thick. No estimates yet on terms of number of barrels, but they say that this could really be substantial.
And again,
there's also the Leviathan natural gas field out in the Mediterranean.
And in the prophecy, of course, you know that well. Are you coming down to take a spoil?
Well, you're coming down to take a spoil, but another thing prophetically is that Israel's 3 top rabbis have over the last months on several occasions said that the Messiah is here. They're not saying he's coming, they're saying he's here and he's about to make himself known to the world. Of course, that's torn right out of Zohar, and these guys are, they're attendees of the metaphysical beliefs that are.
And the Vilna Gaon, who came out recently.
Now, so before we finish today's update, though, we should tell people the reason we're doing this is we're going to be taking, from the beginning of next week, starting on Sunday all the way through to the first of the year. We're going to take time off to be with our families, and so we're doing this looking back on 2015. Tomorrow we'll look forward to 2016. But 2015 was also really a banner year for all these ministries that we are involved in. It was just a little over a year ago when I had a meeting with my staff and I had a big PowerPoint presentation and we were having fun. I did a jib jab in there and, just acting crazy. But then I showed them a picture of a studio, which was somewhat similar to this. And I said, this is what I think we are going to do. I believe that God wants us going down this road. So it was just a little over a year ago, right? We are going to build a studio. We are going, I didn't even know the name of it at the time. SkyWatchTV came later. That was Anita Horn's invention. And I like
Sharon has all my good ideas, too.
I came up with a lot of dumb ideas, but but now look, 1 year later, you're here. Joe Artis always refers to Derek as the most interesting man on television, and he is.
He is indeed.
The host. And we're going to talk tomorrow about some stuff that you'll be doing too in 2016. But you're here.
We got the ranch going.
We got the studio going. We got the ranch going. Oh, and I could tell people that Whispering Ponies Ranch, if they're interested in that, we got the arena finished. We got the heating systems in. We got a second part of the building built where all the storage and stuff's actually all being organized in there right now. Horse baths that are built, public bathrooms for people that will be visiting are finished. We've got infrastructure, electrical, septic systems. We got the land all excavated for the RV park, and the septic systems and power and all that's back in there. We got all the paddocks finished. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, we got a lot done with Whispering Ponies Ranch, and we really do expect that in 2016 we will start operations there in the spring. We'll start having our first groups that are there. We had said we're going to have a Roku channel. Well, now of course we do have a Roku channel, and what are our Roku plays are?
It's ranging from 750,000 to 1 million program views per month.
Per month.
Yeah. And some of the guests that we've had this year have really driven it, though. I mean, of course, Steve Quayle is always brings a huge audience, but Dr. Michael Lake, the Inhuman, or rather, the Inhuman, but also the Path of the Immortal specials with Chris Putnam attracted a lot of attention. Chuck Missler, he'll be coming up, in fact, this week on SkyWatch TV. Yeah. Josh Peck, Carl Gallups. I mean, some of the guests have just been absolutely phenomenal in the thinking that they bring to the projects that they take on, and being able to get them on SkyWatch TV has just been a boost.
Yeah, just this last week, Chris Pinto. He came on, and I believe he totally solved the mystery of the Georgia Guidestones.
It's done.
But the Georgia Guidestones ties to population control, environmentalism, and again, just coming out of Paris, you got the Pope Francis, the leader of the world's largest Christian organization, putting his stamp of approval, even saying that if the church doesn't get behind the push for environmental control to the extent that he wants them to, he's going to ramp up the level at which he is, arguing in
talking about even relaxing perhaps the church's stance on birth control, which is a huge thing for the Roman Catholic Church.
He's also called for a Jubilee year, which we probably should talk about in the next show.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that in the next program. But yeah, so a lot of stuff, and we'll say some stuff about Josh Peck and his wife too in tomorrow's program.
Yeah.
So our look back at 2015, very brief, but we appreciate you watching. And tomorrow we will talk about the year ahead, not just for SkyWatch TV, but for the world at large. For Tom Horn and Sharon Gilbert, I'm Derek Gilbert. Thanks for watching as we keep watch. This is SkyWatch TV. The holidays are on us, and this Christmas, SkyWatch TV can help you give the gift of preparedness to the ones you love.
How better to show your love to your family than to buy something that will help them when their electricity goes out, when everything fails, and we all know that there's a possibility of that happening. This is the time to buy, because if you go to our store, you'll find the Buy This, Get That Free special. And trust me, the Buy This items, they're already discounted, so you're going to save money on that. And you get a wonderful item, in addition, free.
That's right. Go to SkyWatchTVStore.com and look for the Christmas specials. Now, as a news junkie, I'm really excited about some of the crank radios. When times get tough and you need to know what's going on.
Are they just for cranks?
Well, it's perfect for me then, because you can, without batteries, be able to find out exactly what's going on. They're crank radios, including a two-way radio, so you can communicate with friends and family in an emergency.
I think that's incredible. We've got a hand crank radio at home that we use a lot. I hope it never happens, but
Right.
more than likely the day's going to come. Even if it's just a power outage from a storm, you're going to need something to hear the weather on. We've got seed kits,
Yes.
emergency ration kits, Berkey water filters. I mean, it's all the things you wanted to get for prepping and you wanted to save money, or you want to give to your family
Yeah.
members. Now's the time to buy.
And many of those seed kits are heirloom seeds, the kind of things that you don't typically get when you go to the store to buy seeds. Seeds that you can basically, when the plant ripens, you can save some of those seeds and plant them again next year.
You can. It's almost a buy once, have them forever sort of thing if you just save from year to year. And they're non-GMO.
Exactly. Plenty of other items in the store, including more information, books that tell you about how to prepare and plan for times that are troublesome. And certainly that would describe the age we're living in right now.
Buy this. Get that free. You gotta love it.
Yep. Give the gift of preparedness this holiday season. SkyWatch TV, SkyWatchTVstore.com. And again, Merry Christmas from SkyWatch TV.